No, it's the like I'll give you an example on the iPads. Some of the photo management stuff you can only do with the iLife products.
Now I know where you're
With
going. Okay.
with certain syncing.
Yeah.
Like I've talked about this on YouTube. I know people. It's like we all know I have a Mac Mini back here just to keep up with what the Apple ecosystem is doing and yada yada and so forth. Uh, I know several people that because of the way iTunes on Windows works a little bit differently than iTunes on a Mac, they'll sync on a Windows machine and then their iPhone will become screwed up. It's like they'll sync, they'll resync, they'll sync again, they'll resync, they'll sync again. I've done research. Apparently what causes this is bits of app A, app B, and app C can coalesce to form a syncing error, like a bit got glitched during a sync at one point, at which point it you have to do a complete resync, which is something the Windows version of iTunes isn't capable of doing. You have to take the iPhone to a Mac, plug into the Mac version of iTunes, and do a complete wipe resync to restore the device, and then it can move on.
You can't do a restore or backup on the
Uh,
Windows.
if for some reason it doesn't work on the Windows version. Like it does it, but then the very next time you resync, the phone's screwed up again. And this is one of those things that's like, if they're going to require you to hook into this proprietary system, they need to make sure it's equally accessible tools on the other things. I don't have a problem in and of itself that they want you to go through the iTunes proprietary world. My problem is the iTunes proprietary world is only 100% on a Mac.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah, if you can't do, I always imagine, but you're spot on the iPhoto thing. I tried iTunes a while back on Windows, and one of the worst applications on Windows in my opinion. It was slow,
No,
clunky, it crashed all the time. Got rid of it, and never tried anything with iTunes on Windows ever again. But I am curious as to what happens with your photos if you take them on a Windows machine. Is it just act as a drive, and you can just take them off the phone and then use any photo?
From what I've read, yeah, that's how it works. But like the advanced features for how you organize the photo albums that the iPad and iPhone devices are capable of doing now yeah, it's like you can't use any of that. And there's no way to access it, and there's no way to mess with it. It's like they deliberately went out of their way to design it where this is a feature you can only do via a Mac, not via this Apple device.
In all fairness, a lot of that organizing of the photos runs through iPhoto, and you would have to have that application now. They could easily release iLife for Windows. I'm a big supporter.
And you know what? I wouldn't mind if they did that, just so people who are in the Apple mobile ecosystem but are in the Windows ecosystem everywhere else can have full use of stuff. The problem is, I'd be afraid if they did that, it would be just like iTunes is for Windows.
Yeah, and it's the same. Hey, I nailed Steve Jobs on a lot of when he was talking about how the least common denominator. It's exactly what he does with most Apple software for Windows, because they don't want to write it in VB or C#. I use the same thing. Look, not everybody's going to want to use Cocoa. They want C++ or C or Java. But I mean, at least it's not as bad where Windows tried to block Java and then they said, well, look, we've got J++. I mean, I remember the days of that.
I think that had more to do with the fact that they were trying to where that came from was the early XP days, where they were trying to integrate a lot of this stuff and make it better, and Sun sued the wazoo out of them for trying to integrate stuff, and that's
I stopped. I have to go check on something real quick, and I'll be right back. Give me a couple seconds.
okay.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry, my alarm was beeping.
Oh, that's okay. No, but it's like, and you know, that's one of the ways. It's like, I don't want to go too much into this because we got other topics to cover. But like what we were talking about with the Java thing, where it's usually where those problems come from is some third-party company wants to make integration of their stuff as difficult as possible, and both Linux and Mac suffer from this problem too in other ways. And it's like I I'm not a big fan of holding operating systems responsible for things that are completely beyond their control. It's it's in an ideal world everybody would play nice with each other, but when it's the other person causing problem, you can't blame the OS. You want to, and it becomes a problem for the platform, but it isn't the OS's fault. It's um, anyways, the third point this person had, and I want to get your feedback on this. This has to do with them just wanting Android to work like the iPhone. They said Android has no multi-language keyboard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, that was news to me too. It's one of those things that's different, and it goes into what you were saying earlier. Android does not prohibit duplicating functionality of the device. Apple does. In which case, you can't create a keyboard for the iOS platform because that's duplicating functionality of iOS, which is the iOS keyboard. Which means Apple has to integrate all the languages into that. Which means you have a bunch of languages you don't necessarily need taking up space on your device. Because Android...
Doesn't HTC Sense have its own keyboard?
HTC Sense has its own keyboard. That's the thing, and some of them, depending on the form factor of their device, reject the traditional Android keyboard and add their own, and yada yada and so forth. And that's actually one of the things that there are apps in Android that make it a lot more customizable. If you go into the marketplace and just search for keyboard, you will find keyboards. If you're looking for a specific language like German, which was this guy's problem, or Japanese or Korean or whatever, they're in there. And that was the thing. I'm like, which solution do you think's better? Is Apple's of we're going to provide it all, and if you don't like the way we do it, you're just kind of stuck with it, or Android's of if
the way is better. I think that both are fair enough. Android is iPhone. The iPhone is the operating system and the OEM in one. Plus, I mean, well, let's put it this way: the iPhone is its software plus two OEMs.
Right.
Apple, and then the carrier. Android simply is. We've built a foundation. Make it now. It's yours to do with what you please. Now, when that started off, we're like, well, let's have some standards, and they're beginning to put those in. But it depends how you look on it. I think it's extremely powerful from an Android perspective, to say, man, HTC Sense. Brilliant. Put a layer on there. It makes it more you, and you can use that and compete against another carrier that also uses Android, and perhaps your layering is going to be better than theirs, and so on and so forth. That's a very powerful ecosystem, in my opinion. But so is Apple's method in saying, we're gonna have this experience. It's ours. You must comply with our APIs or go away. Both seem to be working there. I think what happens is.
Well, I hear what you're saying there. I was talking more about the specific case, because when I read this complaint, of why iOS is better than Android, because that's basically this person's position. They have 10 reasons why Android doesn't work like the iPhone, therefore the iPhone's better. Their thing was no multi-language keyboard out of the box. I don't think it's that inconvenient if you buy a phone in an English-speaking country that you should have to add a German or Korean keyboard.
I agree with that. If you bought it, that's what I was going to ask you. What did they get?
He bought it in England, but he travels to Germany sometimes, and he was complaining because there wasn't a German keyboard in it by default.
Oh, well. I wouldn't knock Android for that specifically. I mean, that is a plus for the iPhone in doing that. Yeah, with the different languages. But then again, I wonder what the footprint is in having so much.
No, that's what I was talking. That's what I was talking about. It's It's